And welcome to the H&N Digital Center for another edition of the Long Game Podcast. Today's guest, Chris McLachlin, and we are very honored. Chris, thank you so much. Somebody that is universally beloved. I mean, it took us a while to even get down here into the studio. Athlete, coach, broadcaster, author, UH Circle of Honor inductee, husband, father, grandfather. So a lot of ground to cover here.
I guess that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's a real pleasure. Where should we begin? Let's start at Punahou. When did you start there as a student, and were you always a two-sport athlete?
Actually, I went to Jefferson Elementary from kindergarten and first grade. My mom said, hey, let's go to Hawaii.
Coming from where?
She just gotten divorced. She's from Southern California. Okay. And we came, she said, we went on the Lurleen, and we came here, and I just tagging along, little snot-nosed little 5-year-old. And I remember being barefoot every day, and I remember we're selling newspapers at Kalikau Avenue in front of the Moana Hotel. I remember diving for pennies out at the harbor on boat days. And I remember learning how to surf from some legends in Waikiki, like George Downing and Blue Makua and some amazing people down there.
What was the first home that you lived
Rabbit
in?
Cake High. I'm sorry?
What do you remember about the first place you lived in?
So we were in some Quonset huts right next to Jefferson School. So this is post-World War II. It was 1946. So right after the war, they built some Quonset huts, and that's where we lived. So that was 1950, 51, 52, around there. So she then said, she met her second husband, and then so she said, we got to go back to the mainland and get married. We'll be right back. Well, they went to the mainland and stayed 10 years, all the way to my junior year, and they decided, no, we want to go back to where we met each other. So they uprooted me from people I had gone to school with for 10 years, and applied to Punahou for my senior year. And it's kind of hard to get into Punahou senior year. They usually let military kids in, but somehow I got in. I was very lucky, and I played basketball and volleyball there, and I think I would have played tennis too if it didn't overlap with basketball, because those are kind of my three sports. And then I surfed a lot, and then and from there I went to Stanford and played volleyball and basketball, and then came back to Hawaii.
Wow.
Yeah. I came back after I graduated from Stanford. I came back, spent a year. I worked for Pan Am. They helped pay my way through. I worked for them. The money I earned from them helped pay for my education at Stanford. But I worked for them for another 6 months, and I was ready to just sign on with them like forever. It was a great job. And then all of a sudden I applied to the School of Education at Stanford just for fun, see if I could get in, and sure enough I got in. And then from there I applied to Punahou and got that job.
When did you know you wanted to get into coaching?
That's a great story. So I'm at Stanford. I'm a freshman in 1964, and I'd finished playing freshman basketball. And then volleyball tryouts were like in January or February. And all of us, there was about 10 of us, were really excited that there's an Olympian going to be playing on the team. This guy was a stud, named John Taylor, played in the Tokyo Olympics. And he comes to practice, the first practice, and brings a clipboard, and he says, you know, guys, it's my senior year at Stanford. I'm really tired of volleyball right now. I just trained for the Olympics for 4 years. I'm done. But today I'm going to choose somebody to take over the team. So at the end of 2 hours, he hands me the clipboard and says, "You look like the most organized guy here. I'm gonna give you the clipboard and you're in charge." And here I'm 18 years old, and I don't know much about coaching other than how I was coached, I guess. And that was it. And I coached there for the next 5 years. I was the player coach, and luckily we kept the program alive, because you have to keep the program. Club program has to be live until you get NC2A certification. You have to be live for 3 years prior to that.
So
I
you're
think-
playing as a club team.
Yeah. So I felt like my biggest contribution to Stanford volleyball was keeping it alive so they could be NC2A when I left. So, yeah, that was pretty much it.
What did the early days of that coaching career look like?
You know, that's interesting. I tried to harken back on that. I'm trying to think. I tried to be detailed in practice organization. I tried to plan out the minutes and plan out the drills. And I didn't just show up and play, let's go play. I really spent time planning. And I remember being surrounded by a bunch of guys who were really good players and smart students. And I remember I think they felt sorry that I hadn't planned so much, so they just agreed to everything that I did. They could have been better players, So I was sort of soft pedaled into the coaching career.
And it was enough for you to be like, okay, I can keep doing this.
Yeah,
it
exactly.
works out.
Exactly, and I think part of the reason I got my job at Punahou was they saw that I could coach some volleyball and some basketball. I think they knew that Bud Scott was going to be retiring at some point. And in volleyball, that was a casual hire. Almost every year they get somebody different. Now they can get somebody steady. So I think that's part of the reason why I got the job. And
what was calling you back to the islands? Was it the Punahou opportunity to coach over there?
Yes, and I really missed the islands. I mean, even though I went to Punahou 1 year, I felt like I went there for 10 years. I learned more than I did at the other school where I went in Southern California. And with all due respect, it was a great school, but Punahou was just like another level. It was like going to college almost. It was really, I remember it being really difficult, and in fact, I remember it being harder than my freshman year at Stanford. So, but I was calling to get back to the things that I loved, surfing and volleyball, and being back with my friends, and yeah.
That must have felt great.
Yeah.
Just to ingratiate yourself into the community again.
Yeah. It was really fun.
Was
really
it a
fun.
teaching position as well?
Yes, it was. So they put me into fourth grade math, and so I taught that for the first couple of years. I had some great mentors. Tim Lucas, shout out to Tim Lucas and Ann Kennedy. They just took me by my ear and taught me the ways of the world of the winning units, the K through 4 situation. And then I over the next 35 years, or 36, it was 2 years in math, so I had 35 more years where I evolved into a lot of different positions. I think I did the next 10 years I spent in the elementary. I loved elementary. So I taught 3 and 4 PE then for a while, and then I went on a sabbatical, and I learned a lot about early education. So I came back and started a K through 2 program. So kindergarten had never had any teachers there to do PE. So I started that. That was really fun. And then I eventually moved to the high school after 12 years and was to do something different. And then I taught a lot of different things in the high school. So I'm grateful that it's almost like I changed jobs like every 7 years. And rather than quitting and going to get a new employer, I had the same employer, but I got to really change jobs.
You got to explore different opportunities.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's really fun.
I'm sensing a trend here and a theme. What was it about education and working with young people that seemed to be something that you gravitated to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of it was because I came from a family of educators, and I think that was the biggest thing. My mom was a teacher, my dad was a teacher, my stepfather was a teacher, and it was sort of kind of in my blood. I thought at one point, I thought, I got to try this, and so, but it was mostly because of I felt I had it in my DNA, I guess.
Were you coaching volleyball and basketball, both?
Yeah. So in 70 to 74, I was doing volleyball and basketball. So I had 8 different teams then, and then in 74, Bud Scott retired, and I took over the basketball program in 75, doing just varsity basketball.
Okay.
So it was varsity volleyball and JV basketball is what I did the first 4 years.
What was the state of the programs at the time?
They were pretty good. I had a lot of success, but I gotta say I had really great players, and I had some really great assistant coaches that guided me, and some great mentors. And so I gave a lot of credit to a lot of people that surrounded me. My wife was also very supportive in that coaches tend to be gone a lot. We were married the first few years, and I'm like coaching all the time. And she was with the national team in volleyball, so she was gone a lot too. So she was very patient that I was really, since we didn't have any children then, I basically adopted each team as my family and treated them like they were family. So.
And she was also instrumental in starting up the Rainbow Wahine volleyball program.
She was actually the first scholarship athlete, I think, there, thanks to Patsy Mink and Title IX and Donis Thompson. And she was really fortunate to be around then. An interesting story, Dave Shoji was my assistant coach in volleyball at the time, and I was coaching the UH women's team in the spring season, during the club season. I'd take the whole team and I'd work them out, and then in the fall I'd turn them over to whoever's coaching. So it turns out that she offered me the UH job. And I said, oh, I don't know, she's gonna pay me like, I don't know, $1,500. And I was making more than that at Punahou, not a lot more, but I was making more. And I said, I don't think I can take that, but I got this assistant that might be good at it. He's got a wife who works. My wife doesn't work. She's negative income. She's always going off to travel with the national team. But I got this guy, Dave Shoji, who's got his wife works for Hawaiian Airlines. Glenda is her name, and Glenda Dorr, and so she basically was their income source, and so he said, yeah, I'll take it. So that's how Dave got his job. And he knows us to this day. He'll say, hey, thanks for 42 years ago that you gave me the job.
That's crazy.
So anyway, that was how that went.
Wow. Yeah. And it's wild too. What really jumps out to me is that you're moving back, and you two are already so entrenched in Hawaii's volleyball scene.
Right.
And so impactful. You look at the years of legacy that you both have left.
Yeah, he was coaching actually at Kalani at one time. He was coaching at Punahou. He was really diving into it with both hands on, and I was diving in with both hands on. So we were having similar passions about what we were doing, for sure.
I know you've talked about this, but I got to hit you with this question. One of your basketball players in the late 70s went on to have a very bright future. Future U.S. President Barack Obama was one of your players. Describe for me, what kind of player was he? That's incredible.
So Brock's a great story. He loved the game of basketball, probably more than any of my players that year, or maybe even other years. His typical day was he would go before school. He'd arrive at school early, like it. He lived across the street, so he'd come over at like 7:30. He'd have games till 8 o'clock. Then there'd be a juice break at 10 o'clock. He'd go out and play again. Then at lunchtime, he'd throw down a quick sandwich. Then he'd go out and play again, another hour. Then I had him at 3 o'clock for 3 hours. He'd go home and have dinner. Then he would go to Makiki Park, and he'd play street ball for another couple hours. That was his typical day. He loved the game so much. And he had some other gym rats, we call them. They were his good buddies. And when I wasn't giving him enough time in his senior year, he finally made the varsity team his senior year. He said, he called a meeting. He said, Coach, can I have a conference with you? And he comes in. All the people that interviewed me that year, he got elected, said, did you do anything presidential? And I said, well, really the only thing I remember that he did presidential was he called this meeting, and he brought in the other two guys that weren't getting enough time either, and they were gym rats as well. And he made a really good case, and very respectfully so, how they should get more time. And I think the rest of the year, I think I did give him more time, but probably still wasn't enough because those guys wanted to play all the time. But what was interesting was we won big in the final, and that was the only game that was televised all year. And I know I played him a lot that one because the starters were pulled out by middle of the second quarter, and then they just played a little bit in the third, and then Brock got to play a lot of TV time the rest of the game. So I hope that made him happy. But When he got elected, he said, "Coach, come see me anytime you're in D.C. Come see me." And I said, "Okay." And then I thought, well, he's just being nice. That all presidents would say that to former coaches.
Had you stayed in touch in the decades prior, in the years since before you got elected?
Not that much. We just knew we knew what each other was doing, but never really connected.
Right.
So it had been a while. But he says to me, he came home at Christmas after he got elected, and we played. He wanted to play hoops at Christmas, so my two sons got to play, and a couple of guys he travels with played, and they played like 3 hours, and it was really fun watching him play. And Daryl Gabriel, one of his teammates, who was MVP that year, comes up to me afterwards. He says, "Coach, Brock's way better than Barry was." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Barry, Brock takes charges. He gives assists. In high school, he just wanted to shoot, So it was, and Brock laughed about it. He knows about that. But so after that game, he said, "Hey, Coach, have you ever, back east?" Turns out I had a severe stroke in 2008. And when I came back from being on the mainland, I started volunteering at the American Heart Association. And somewhere in there, I must have said something like, I'd sure love to meet the person who cloned TPA. TPA is an enzyme we have in our systems, breaking up clots all the time. But if you have a stroke, like if you have a clot that gets stuck, you need a lot of TPA. And so I said, God, that person saved my life, whoever it was. And so what happened was, 2 years later, I'm up at Stanford. I get a phone call from the Heart Association. "Hey, we got this gal." I don't know if the gal called me and she gave it. "Hey, I'm coming up. We understand you want to meet the person who cloned TPA." I said, "Oh my God, it'd be like meeting the Pope. Are you kidding me?" So backtrack just a little bit. Because I was doing so much American Heart Association work, I was back in D.C. like 6 of his 8 years.
Wow.
So now I'll finish the other story. I get up there and this lady brings leis from Hawaii. I'm working at Stanford at the time, and this person comes out. We have kind of a big room, and there's all these television cameras. I mean, it's like a big deal. And they're all thanking, "Hey, Mr. McLachlin, thank you for coming. Really appreciate it." I said, "What? This is not about me. This is about whoever, invented TPA." They said, "Well, we're the sales and marketing team. There's like 20 of us, and we've never met her in a type of big-time male-dominated science world. It was a she that invented TPA, or cloned it. And so she read your article in the San Francisco Chronicle, and it was her request to have you come in." I went, "Whoa, it's like meeting it's like meeting the Pope." So I go in, and she gives me a lei. I stand up and give my little 10-minute talk. She's in the front row bawling. I give my lei to her. She gives her 10-minute talk. I'm in the front row bawling. And since then, we've been kindred spirits. And her story is like amazing. It's affected my life dramatically, and the way I coach, and how when I give my perseverance speech, I talk about her. She went can I talk about that? Tell you that?
Good, go for it. Yes,
this is pretty. You'll like this one, especially Sienna. So, her first year in the job at Genentech, largest biotech firm in the world, the good old boys, the guys in suits, say, "Let's send the new chick, to Oslo in January for the World Chemistry Conference." And they're going, "I don't want to be in Oslo." They're all going, "I don't want to be in Oslo in January. It's freezing." She says, "Oh, I'll go. That'll be fun." She goes. In 4 days, she befriends the guy who won the Nobel Peace Prize in chemistry that year. They become best friends. As she leaves, he says to her, she's already got a bunch of patents already, but he says to her, hey, Diane, you're really, really an amazing scientist. Here's my advice to you right now as you get on the plane. When you go back to San Francisco to Genentech, start working on pancreatic cancer, liver cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer. And he goes on to name like 7 cancers. And whatever you do, don't try to clone TPA because I've already tried. It's the most difficult DNA in the world. I'm the best chemist in the world. They just gave me the Nobel Peace Prize for it. So don't bother with cloning TPA. Spend your time on these other things.
He explicitly tells
her that.
Stay away from this one.
Explicitly. She goes back to San Francisco on Monday at 7 a.m. And what does she start doing? What do you think, Mark?
He starts working on TPA.
Starts working on TPA. The moral of the story is, don't ever tell a woman she can't do something. She works 17 hours till midnight. She hands 6 Petri jars over to this nerd whose job it is to watch the Petri jars till 7 a.m. to see if anything grows. The next morning she comes in at 7 a.m. She says, good morning, nerd. Anything grow? He says, sorry, Dr. Panika, nothing grew. And she goes, oh, okay. So she works 17 more hours. Gives them the jars, the Petri jars at midnight. Goes through the same thing. Guy watches them for 7 hours. Nothing grows. My question to the audience or a team at this time is, how many 17-hour days in a row could you work before you needed a day off? So in a row, consecutively. Mark?
Maybe a week's worth.
Okay, 7?
Something. Yeah.
Sienna, 7? The average audience answer at this point, when I give this talk, is 3. And a lot of people say 0. A lot of people say I can only do 1. Dr. Diane Panika did 724 before she took a day off. Who does that? So I'm definitely around. So you can see why I was crying in the front row, because this person stayed for 724 17-hour days, and it saved my life. What she cloned saved my life, and it saved 2.7 million lives since then. And then they found out a few years ago that it works in heart operations. On the tubing they do for heart operations, surgery and stuff, the clots get in there all the time, and the person dies because there's a clot there. They now take TPA, shoot it into the tube, it breaks up the clot, they continue the operation. She saved another 1.9 million lives there. I'm like, it's just stunning what she's done. But so then I talk about perseverance, and you think you get tough, you think you're tough. Well, this little 5'4" Bostonian just kicks butt and takes names later. Amazing lady. So okay, so now back to Brock. So the Heart Association started sending me up there, and the reason they did was because when I went to a conference there, if they knew that I could get a hold of the president, they would give me certain materials from the conference, and I would hand them to him if I got to see him. Because in the history of the Heart Association, they'd never gotten to the executive branch. It would only go to the legislative branch. So the senators and congressmen and representatives, they were the only ones who got stuff from the conference. So I want to say 4 of the 6 years were conferences, and the other 2 were, we won the NCAA championship one year, and so he invited all the NCAA champions up, so I saw them. Anyway, the most moving one was, he saw me all 6 times. I called him 6. I would have thought after the first, Oval Office visit and picture taking, that'd be it. And he'd say to his old coach who didn't play him enough, no, I'm not gonna see you. He could have easily done that. He said yes 6 times. I saw him all 6 times. Not all Oval Office, but we would always visit. And the last one I'll never forget, Oval Office is kind of small, and the hallway is small. And lined up on the hallway as you leave the Oval Office, there's like these studs, like 6'2", 220-pound guys are looking straight ahead, and they're there to protect the president, right? A lot of testosterone in this hallway. As I'm walking out, he gives me a big hug, and walking out, I get partway down the hallway, and I just apologized to him for like the 10th time about not playing him enough.
It always comes up, I'm guessing.
Oh, every time. Every single time. He shouts out, "Hey, coach!" I turn around. He says, "Hey, coach, I love you, man." I go, "I love you too, Barack." I never expected that at all, especially having him say that in all in front of these. It's a very vulnerable thing to say in front of a lot of people, especially in front of all these guys. And I say, "I love you back." And then I cried all the way from there to Pennsylvania Avenue, not believing, what I just heard from this guy. So anyway, that's kind of my best Barack story. It's better than any basketball story, other than he was really good. He could have started on any other team in the LH. We were loaded that year, and I'll circle back and say, yeah, he was really good. He could play, and he still can play, but now he loves golf. I'm hoping to get 9 holes in with him before I die, but we'll see if that happens.
Wow, what a story there.
Anyway.
I want to go back to the stroke. It's 2008. What do you remember about that incident, that time in your life?
Okay, so I'm 2007, I retired in June.
From coaching
time,
at Punahou?
No, retired so I started in 70, retired in 07. Okay. I made 37 years. I was about ready to retire. I could have gone longer, but my wife said, you've been working really hard, 3 jobs. You're coaching and you're doing the TV stuff and you're teaching. She says, you ought to just go. When Spencer goes, you go. That way you can visit him in college. And Parker was on the PGA Tour at the time. I can go see him. So 6 months later, it's like January, I planned this month-long trip to see Spencer at Stanford, see Parker on the PGA Tour event, and see my daughter Becca, who was in Utah. And I'm sitting there 5 days into it. I'm sitting there helping some people who had helped me get through my last year. They housed me my last year in the school when I was going through the School of Education. And I'm sitting there watching a basketball game, and I go down. What I remember is, just tilting to my right and just sort of losing speech. I couldn't tell them what I was feeling. And I go down, and I'm paralyzed completely on my right side. And the lady who's there, who was like my mom, my Greek mom, she says to her husband, Bob, he's having a stroke. Call 911 right now. She had had a stroke 10 feet from where I did 3 years prior, and she couldn't get TPA, and she wanted me to get it, but she knew you can't get it unless you get to the hospital within 4 hours. So the paramedics are there within 10 minutes, and then they flip a coin. I was between Kaiser and Stanford, and they went to Kaiser. Luckily, Kaiser was doing it. They called my wife. Ma'am, your husband's had a severe stroke. He's paralyzed, and we want to give him this new drug, but it's not a drug. It's really an enzyme they're putting in your system. But there's a 10 to 12% chance he's going to die, because it had just come out then, so they hadn't refined it to where it's now. It's like more like a 5% chance, like half of that. But at that time, it was 10%, 10 to 12. And she says to him, we already talked about this, give it to him, and I'll be right there. She jumps on the next plane, comes over. Meantime, I'm in the hospital, and I remember not remembering much other than that I couldn't talk and that my right side was paralyzed. And that's pretty much. I remember being in the ambulance. I remember them taking me to the room, the emergency room. Once they got permission to give the shot to me, I remember them, my little Greek lady who had had a stroke, she had her husband drive her, tail the ambulance to the hospital. And she had been working her beads, her Greek beads, the whole time, praying for that I would live. And she comes into the room where they're giving the shot. Somehow she got in, and she's doing her beads and stuff. And the doctor says, Mr. McLachlin, raise your right leg. And I remember raising my right leg, and I remember her going, oh, thank God, thank God. And he says, who left that person in the room? Get them out of here. And she had illegally gone in because she wanted to make sure that I was going to live and that I was going to not be paralyzed and I was going to be whole, unlike how she got to be. So that was pretty moving. I remember that little incident. And after that, I think I was up there 3 months. I couldn't fly for 3 months, so I was seeing the neurologist. They moved me to Stanford the next day because I had HMSA, which was Stanford. So the next day, they emergency ambulanced me over to Stanford, and I got this new team.
What was your recovery like?
Ooh, that's a great question. So about 4 days into it, I'm passing all the tests. I'm unparalyzed, and I can speak sort of okay, and I kind of passed the occupational therapy tests, and the physical therapy tests, sort of, but enough to where they said, we think we can release you, and once you just come back, and you'll be coming in for weekly visits for the next 3 months. And so we just want to take one more test. We want to give you an MRI to check. Want to get a baseline what your carotid artery looks like. That's where I had a piece of plaque flew off. And I said, yeah, fine. I've done those before. So we go in, and my wife, meantime, has gotten all my stuff out of the room, and she's at the front desk, ready to go. I get into the room, and the attendant says to me, Mr. McLachlin, now you got to understand that heart patients or stroke patients sometimes have these three things happen to them in that little tube. They'll get depressed, anxious, or claustrophobic. So just hit this little button. If you feel any of those things coming up, you don't want to take it, just let me know, I'll pull you out. So I'm in there about 30 seconds, and I'm getting claustrophobic. And he pulls me out, puts me in a chair. I go sit in the chair. He says, just put your head between your knees, and you'll be fine. We'll try again in a few minutes. Then I black out. Next thing I know, I'm on a gurney, and they're wheeling me down the hallway. And the team that had just released me, of white coats, all the interns and the head doctor and all these people, they're on there and saying, what happened? I said, I don't know, you tell me. Actually, I couldn't say that because I couldn't speak. I kicked back into my last homeostatic state, which was paralysis and no speaking. I had a seizure. And the seizure kicked me back into my last, so they thought I'd had another stroke. And they were really worried. So give me a CAT scan, and it turns out I didn't have one, but it would take longer for me to get out. They couldn't give me another TPA to kick me out. I had to get out on my own. So it took me another, I think, 4 or 5 days. They re-entered me into the hospital, and each day I got a little bit better. And then finally, I think on the 5th or 6th day, they released me for a second time. And then I was checking in every week for a month, and then every other month, and then now I'm on a once-a-year thing. I'm actually going to go up either in October, November, December. One of these next 3 months, I'll go see my guy, who's the same neurologist has managed my medication for the last 17 years. I'm grateful that he's taking good care of me. And I've got great people here, and I've got great doctors here as well. So.
You were how old at the time when you first suffered your stroke?
That's a good question. I was 61.
Okay.
62.
Have doctors told you that your recovery has just been remarkable? It's the fact that you move along.
Yeah.
You move around wonderfully. Your speech is perfectly intact.
My speech isn't I still stumble once in a while. I really search for words, but all the people I hang out with, old people I hang out with, say, "Oh, that just comes with the territory. It comes with the age. Don't worry about it." And I think back and thinking it's part of it has to do with my stroke, but I do have balance issues. So like I can't play. I fell during playing pickleball. It turns out I can't move quickly to my left. I fell playing tennis, so I can't move quickly to my right. So I find these things out as I go along. And my doctor says, "Oh, you know what? You were out for 75 minutes times 2 million brain cells a minute. So you lost 150 million brain cells. So you're going to only find out as time goes on what kind of deficits you might have. But your major functionalities are great. Nobody will probably notice, but you will notice these little things about movement and balance. And the drugs might have part of it too. The medication might be part of it too, but more of it's the incident of the stroke."
About how long did it take for you to sort of feel somewhat back to normal?
Probably, I would say 6 months, at least.
That's great. You hear about some stroke incidents where it takes much longer than
Yeah. I was very lucky, and that's why I wanted to meet that person who invented it, because it was like I feel like I'm the same again. This is so cool. And who's responsible for this? This lady. Amazing.
Funny how the universe works.
I know. God just wasn't done with me yet, but I was prepared to go. I mean, I thought I had checked out. I thought it was over.
I'm going to go to different segments of your career here. We're
Absolutely.
bouncing around. 1982, if I'm correct, is when you started as a broadcaster. Doing the UH games.
Yeah, it would have been 84, I think.
84.
When they first started KHNL 13.
Okay.
But before that, I had done a couple of games with the Wahine when Dennis Thompson invited over USC one year to the Blaisdell, invited UCLA another year, filled up the place both times when everybody said, "Oh no, you'll only get club size attendance, 2,500 people, and that's it." And she blew everybody away by filling up the arena both times. I think I did one of those games with Don Robbs, and the other one I might have done with Jim, but the story behind my start in broadcasting was Rick Blangiardi starts up this contract with UH, and he calls me in, and I do, I want to say, some sort of a screen test. I'm not sure what it was, but it wasn't really an interview. It was like 5 minutes. It was like, and he calls me on Monday and says, "Hey, you're in." I went, "What? Isn't there more to this? I mean, do I have to learn how to speak properly in front of the camera and where my eyes go in front of the green light and all these other fancy things?" No. So he hired me, Pal Eldridge, the same year, and we're classmates, by the way, and we've been in there the same amount of time. And so it's been 41 years for both of us. And it was all because Rick said to himself, "I'm going to get somebody who's a teacher, who knows how to communicate. Teachers can communicate." We're assuming that. And someone who knows about the sport. And I'm going to let the dice roll from there. I know Jim can carry it. If those guys blow it, Jim can carry them. And that's exactly what happened. Blangiardi was prophetic when he said that about what we could do as rookie broadcasters. All the praise to him for having the guts to go out and get that contract, and then to hire all these rookies, and then he surrounded himself with people who were good at the things that he wasn't.
Did you instantly like it, or did it take some time for you to be like, okay, I'm a little bit more comfortable?
Yeah, no, I actually instantly liked it because it was something different than teaching I'd be doing all day. It was like a hobby. It was like, okay, if I'm gonna go to the game anyway, I might as well get paid for going to the game and hanging out. So that's kind of my premise in the beginning. I will say I was very, very nervous when we did our stand-ups. We did a pregame live, and I'd like to be prepared. So I'd have my little 3x5 card that I have the notes on. "Jim, what are we going to talk about tonight? Jim, what's going to be in the open? Don't worry about it." He would never give me a clue about what's going to be going on. And so I got more nervous, thinking, "Oh God, what's he going to ask me? And will I have the answer?" And so I was very nervous in those first years. And then I got used to it, and I got used to there's a genius behind what Jim's talking about. He wants me to be, really spontaneous, off the cuff, from the gut. And so then I got used to it. Once I learned what his secret was.
What was that process like, building chemistry with Jim Leahy? He's such a legend in broadcasting.
Oh man, what a legend. You're right. He was he's a school teacher as well, taught at Campbell High School. Great history as a school teacher. So he came in with that educational background. So I think he empathized with both me and Pal. And he nurtured us along, and he mentored us, and he would give me, throughout the years, he'd give me these certain things you don't do. You don't eat at the table. So I can't bring the crew food from the truck and eat at the table. You don't do that. And there were certain other things that he had. Oh, I know. On a big play, like a really great rally and a boom at the end, it's a really great play, there's a tendency for me as a coach to want to cheer like, yeah, way to go, that's such a great play. He'd grab my arm and squeeze and say, let the crowd do it. Let the crowd do it. Sure enough, I've learned how to do that and give Kanoa room to make the first talk after a big rally, rather than me. I know he'll throw it to me at some point, and I'll take it when I get it. But the most natural, best way for the viewer to consume that moment is to have the audience tell the fans tell them what happened, and then the play-by-play guy, and then finally the color guy. So Jim, that was one of the great things that he taught me that I'm very grateful for.
Get out of the way, right?
Get out of the way, exactly.
He'd literally squeeze your arm.
Yes. Yes. Yes, exactly. And
stand down.
Yes, exactly. And I do remember wanting to contribute more early on, but then there'd be the stepping on toes thing. So I learned early on.
It's a dance.
It's a dance. You got to learn how to dance, and I'm not the lead. He's the lead. When I really began to appreciate it most was in '98 when he was out with his cancer issues, and they moved me over to play-by-play. And I knew it before then, but I really started to appreciate his job when I went play-by-play. And I said, no, I don't do play-by-play. And Dan Schmidt says, no, you can do it. I know you can do it. Just move over one seat, and okay, then you got to pay me $1 more because that's harder. And he says, okay, I'll pay you $1 more. So he said, so I said to Dan,
were you doing these broadcasts solo, by the way? Did you have a
No,
partner?
I had a color.
Okay.
I had a color. But I said, Dan, here's the deal. The play-by-play guy builds this easel, builds this frame, and it's there's these beveled edges, and we don't show any of the nail marks. I'm going to build this really perfect, beautiful frame, and it's hard to do that. You ask any carpenter, no pun intended, how difficult it is to build perfect frames. And that's what Kanoa does all the time. That's what Jim did all the time, build these perfect frames. And I wasn't great at building frames. I was better at throwing the paint on. And that's basically what the color guy does, no pun intended again. Throw that color on that picture, a blank picture that they've given you. And so I learned even more that year how difficult that job is for the fans that are watching out there. What Kanoa does and what Jim did is really difficult to do it really well. I worked with John Fink and Howard Jaszewski as well during that time, and they're both really good at that, and I wasn't good at it. So I'm happy to go over in the color seat and sit there and take my hits when I get them.
And it sounds like it was a natural transition to when you started working with Kanoa too.
Yeah.
Pretty seamless.
Very seamless, especially when with Kanoa. So they as much as they are alike, they're also very different in certain ways. Jim had his amazing way with words. He was a wordsmith, and his inflection and his baritone could always carry a broadcast, make it bigger than it really was. Kanoa can do that same thing, and he's just taken it upon himself to learn a lot about that sport, whatever sport it is he's doing. And so about a year into it, I told Dan Schmidt. I said, Dan, you don't need me. Kanoa knows all the language, the nuances. He can do the whole thing by himself. And Dan turned to me and said, if we had just his voice on the whole time, even though he's great, the listener needs to be woken up once in a while with your high, raspy coach's voice. And so I want to keep you right where you are. I said, okay, I don't have a great radio TV voice, but if it's going to serve that purpose, then I'll hang on. So that conversation's gone on many times. That's how good Kanoa is. He really prepares unbelievably well.
And then it comes to a point where you've been working together for so long that it's just, you know each other's cues.
Yes, exactly.
You know the rhythm of the broadcast, and it just flows.
Exactly. Yeah, I would say over the last, how long have Kanoa and I been together? 10 years? I would say there's been toe stepping on somebody else's toes, maybe 3 times.
Wow.
I'm really clear about when he finishes his thought and he's going to go into a new one, or finishes his thought and I go, that was so good, it needs to settle with the viewer. It was so brilliant what he just said. I got to get out of the way, let it just sink in. I don't need to add anything more to what he just said. It was really good. And he's over there looking at me going, well, don't you have something to say? There's blank space right now. Well, let's leave it blank space, because what you said was really good. So that's kind of the philosophy we have. And if I want to say something, I'll just give him a nudge, and then he'll make room in his next comment. He'll open up the space for me to say something just by my tap on his shoulder. So
it's the game within the game.
Exactly. Yeah, it is a game within the game. Absolutely.
Seeing it firsthand and literally sitting there front row, what have you noticed about how volleyball in Hawaii has evolved over the years?
Oh, man. Well, the men's game clearly is more powerful than it's ever been. And that started with, I think it started with Yuval Kotz and his era. That started the back row attack, the jump serve that would get score aces all the time. So that was 1995, 96, around there. And it's just gotten bigger and better and stronger. Now we got a 6'11" setter. Who would have thought we'd have somebody that's 6'11" setting? Not in your wildest dreams. We're going to have a 7-foot middle blocker this year, too. So it's going to be, it's just getting better and better. They're bigger, they're stronger. I'm thinking they got to raise the net or move the 10-foot line to 11 feet or 12 feet. But I'll let the national intergoverning bodies worry about that. But clearly, it's a bigger, faster, stronger game, and it's really fun to watch. And they're just going to reload this year, by the way. They're going to be really good this year. The women's game, they've evolved as well. More jump servers now than there ever has been. And I think to have a really good serving rotation, I think you have to have at least a couple of jump servers in there to throw a little loop into things that rather than 6 jump floaters in a row, the other team can get in the groove. But if you throw in a couple of jump servers in there, it can throw things up. But not every team has 2 jump servers. But you'll see more and more teams are doing that. More attacks in the back row out of the women. They're playing more like the men's game, more back row attacks. The setters are better and better. They're setting from a younger age, so they set to 10 better offenses, more sophisticated. So yeah, and women's club sports, club volleyball, exploded because the parents see that if they invest $10,000 when they're young, they're going to save $150,000 when they get older. They do the math.
The local talent is at such a elite level right now.
Yeah.
And just you look at the national landscape, there's so much representation out there across the country.
Yeah. Star Advertiser does a little thing every once in a while, follow, what's it called, follow the local kids or whatever. And it's just loaded with our kids that are playing nationally, especially the women right now.
Something I want to touch on is your background as a sports psychologist and getting into the mindset of athletes. What are the key pillars that you would say are the tenets of a successful team? and the building blocks when it comes to that? And I guess the most important determining factors in a successful athlete.
Well, I'd say as far as the team goes, I think it's really important this is not an overused term, to build a culture that's going to be beneficial to all concerned, coaching staff, players, and to build that culture takes time. It's not something you pull out of a book and boom, you go and say, okay, let's do this. It's difficult. And as far as individual player goes, did you ask me that too? Is that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that some players don't need any help at all. I mean, they're just like, they just go, they don't overthink, they just get out and they just play, and others overthink and need some help. So another good reason for using a sports psychologist, I think, is that we only use about 10% of our brain anyway. So if we're not giving people mental training, now they're only using like 1%. The reason I got into it in the first place was as a hobby. Back in 1976, I just started reading sports psychology books. At that time, there was only one book from America, and there was most of the books were from the Iron Curtain, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Russia.
Kidding. There was only
It was by a guy named Tom Tutko at San Jose State, and it was called Sport Psyching, and I ended up being really good friends with him. I brought him over, and he visited. And anyway, so to me, it's just been a complete hobby the whole time. I just do a lot of reading, try to stay up on everything. And if I'm not reading that well, my eyes are getting tired as I get older. I get great students who do the reading for me. I say, is this a good one or not? I'll never forget I had Stephanie Kono do that for me. She's a 3-time All-American at UCLA in golf, and she's a really good student. And she didn't take my class when I was teaching, and she waited until she got out. And she said, okay, I want it now. I'm going to UCLA in the fall. Can we start it in April? I went, what? I said, I'll tell you what, Steph, I'll do it now if you'll be my reader. She says, okay. She's a really good reader. So I started the class with her, gave it all the way up till September. I gave her the course. And in between, I gave her book after book after book after book, and she would grade them A, B, C, D, and I would either buy them or not buy them, and use them or not use them in my work. So I've mostly been a reader and collector of all the latest stuff. I don't have a degree in it, but if I were to take a test, I think I could probably pass it because I've done so much reading. I've had so many teams that I've tried it on too. So I've done a lot of theory and applied it. So a lot of sports psychologists, they just live in the theoretical world, just in the book world. Not everyone is lucky enough to be able to apply it to teams like I've been lucky enough to do.
What are the biggest, if you look at a team, for example, at any level, professional, collegiate, high school, if there are no major injuries, the team is relatively healthy, they're all very skilled, but the team is not doing well.
Yeah.
What are the biggest contributing factors to a successful team collapsing or a talented team not putting it together and collapsing?
That's a great question. I would say there probably hasn't been enough discussion in the team room about what do we need to do to get better? How can we support each other? How can we take responsibility for all the errors we're making? Can we each raise our hand and say, I could have done that better? Can we practice harder? Can we watch more film? Start asking those questions. The great teams will ask those questions all the time. The teams that I think that are at the bottom are avoiding those questions. That's my amateur opinion.
Self-scouting, right?
Yeah.
The importance of self-scouting.
Absolutely, 100%.
With all this talk about literature, and it's my understanding you're an author as well. You're working on a book project. What can you share about that? What?
I'll tell you a funny story about it. Okay.
How did this come together?
So it was about maybe 3 months ago. I have a former athlete of mine played for me in 1986 and 84, 85, 86. And he came up to me. He was visiting Hawaii. He lives in the mainland, but he goes back and forth a lot. He says, "Hey, Coach, have you finished your book yet?" I went, Did you find out that I started one? She says, "Yeah, I found out you started one. How far are you?" I said, "Well, I've got like 8 chapters. I've kind of hit a block, like a writer's block, or I read another book that's saying the same things. I don't feel my story is deserving of being told, and so I'm kind of stuck." And he says, "I'm gonna write chapter 9 for you." What? He goes home, goes to his computer, types in ChatGPT, goes and types in John Wooden, Mike Krzyzewski, Dean Smith, types in the words he can remember from when I practiced with him when I was his coach. And he says, "Write this in the style of Chris McLachlin and make it about 5,000 words. I want it to be chapter 9. Hits a button. 30 seconds later, there's chapter 9. He sends it to me, and Mark, I'm telling you, it was flawless. It was so good. It was like, this is cheating. I can't write chapter 10 now because this is so beautiful. How can I possibly do it by myself? Anyway, so it was sort of a bittersweet moment. I was really excited that he got chapter 9 written, but I also felt like, oh man, how am I going to do chapter 10 and do better than that? And so I'm still stuck again, but I think I'm inching closer toward doing it. My book was going to be called From Worst to First, because of the Stanford experience I had, and I was going to encompass some of the things I learned at Punahou and with all the great teams I had there, and I was going to incorporate that into the Stanford thing, and then talk about how do you get from worst to first, because they were the worst team in the country. They were 4-20, I think, in one year, and then they got a little bit better, and then eventually by Kavika's senior year, Kavika Shoji, they're national champions. So I came in the middle of that in the junior year. So it was a great story, and I really wanted to tell it, and I got started. I got 8 chapters done pretty fast. I gave it to an English teacher to proofread, really good guy, and he ripped it up pretty good, and that kind of discouraged me too that I hadn't written well enough.
And did you get the ChatGPT chapter coming in?
And then the ChatGPT comes in, and I'm like, this is flawless. So anyway, I'm sort of stuck on what I'm going to do now, but I am going to go in deference to this young man who went out of his way to do this. I'm going to do the best I can to write chapter 10. I hope. We'll see.
What are the biggest ideas you want to convey in it?
Well, it would be, it'd be mostly about how a team is built, how a culture is built, how mental toughness is obtained, how concentration is made a part of who you are, and focus, attention to detail, perseverance, all these things. And I'd pull them from a lot of different books, and I'd sort of make it my own words. That's kind of what I was doing. I will say that one of my players on that Stanford team, 2010, I don't see him for 10 years. It's 2020. Sends me a text message. "Coach Mac, this is Jake. I'm living in New York City right now, making about $1.5 million a year working for Goldman Sachs. Life is good. I co-founded this coffee company in South Carolina. But, the executive team just isn't functioning well. They need some CMAC time. I want you to meet them, and I want you to take these 4 best activities that you did with me, and I want you to work that with the executive team." He proceeds to tell me the name of the activity, the equipment necessary, the debrief questions, the whole 9 yards. I'm going, I can't remember I did those things. And this is like so long ago, but he remembers it like it was yesterday. So it tells me that it meant something to him. He's using it in his life as I speak, and he wants to share it with other people. So for the last 5 years, I've been consulting a coffee company in South Carolina, and they're about to get ready to get, I think, bought out by a bigger company. And but it's been a blast working in the business world that way. And the CEO and I have become great friends. He's actually going to come over, I think, in November and learn how to surf. So it's been a wonderful relationship.
What was the activity that he remembered that you?
There was 4 of them.
Okay. 4
of them. You know, the text message was like this long. It was like, how did you do this? How do you remember that much stuff? Which one was it? I want to say one of them might have been a thought for the day. Okay. Like before we start practice, I'd always have a thought for the day, and then each player every day would have to come up with one. And then we'd go every other day because it was too much. It was too much to do. So we did. Basically, the idea was there would be ownership by the people who were doing the practice. There'd be ownership in how the practice was to go. So a guy would stand up and he'd do 5 minutes. He'd give a John Wooden quote about, I don't know, something really simple like, don't whine, don't complain, no excuses. And then he'd give some examples about how he or others in the team do those things. We can't be doing those things, guys. And then the 5 minutes would be over, and they'd talk about it. And at the end of practice, they'd say, how good were you on no excuses, no whining, no complaining? And that became this sort of part of the culture of the team, is that we would look forward to who was going to speak today, and how are we going to have to behave, and how we're going to integrate this into our culture. And when I talk to coaches and do coaches clinics now, I make that my number 1 or 2 thing that I say. I think you got to consider this. This will be a game changer for you, because now the players are having to own it. Now they go to practice, and because it's this theory that they suggested, they now can't just not do it. They've got to actually do it. So it becomes much more powerful than a coach saying, "We'll not have any excuses today."
Right.
They go in one ear out the other.
So you mentioned them, your boys, and we've covered them extensively, Spencer and Parker. Parker, very successful golfer. Spencer is coaching at USC, volleyball. Just, they've had great careers. I'm curious, what was your approach to youth sports as a parent, and you having a successful athletic background? Did you kind of nudge them to get into that, or did you kind of let them figure it out on their own what they wanted to do?
That's a great question. I remember not wanting to push them into anything.
Yeah.
So we would provide lots of balls. Go play with whichever one you wanted. And that kind of happened that way, literally. And then I remember taking Parker when he was about 5 to a baseball practice, a little league thing nearby, and we watched for about half an hour, and he looked up at me and said, "Dad, I don't want to play that." I said, "Why not?" He says, "Well, there's only 2 people that are having fun, the guy that's throwing it and the guy that's catching it." So he made a judgment right away. His story is really kind of interesting, because he picked up a plastic bat that we had out there and started hitting golf balls that he was probably 2. And then it just evolved after that. But his story about how at the end of his UCLA career, he really wrecked his wrist. He was over practicing, and he had to have surgery. And so that year, he couldn't hit a ball, and the surgeon said, "There's a 50% chance this isn't going to work. You have a bad injury." But I want to play in the PGA Tour. No, you're going to have a year of recovery of this thing. Very specific exercises, very difficult. So he decides that he's going to employ a sports psychologist. He's going to get his mental game. If he can't work with the body, he's going to work with the mind. So he read a lot of stuff and met with this guy named Dr. Don Green, really, really good sports psychologist. And did that for a year, and I think that really set the tone for how he was going to approach his career. So he won like 7 times on 7 different tours, and then he made a bunch of excuse me, he made a bunch of qualifiers to get on tour, and anyway, long story short, he won, I think, in his second year on tour. And so as he went through his career, he then changed his swing, unfortunately, and that maybe wasn't his best decision, and he's admitted that. And because he never really did recapture that championship swing that he had. So about 3 years ago, so now he's 15, 18 years into the PGA Tour. He's driving home from Las Vegas, and from a swing lesson, of all things. And he says to himself, he's driving to Scottsdale. He says to himself, you know what, I'm not putting any food on the table. I'm not getting into tournaments. If I do get in one, I'm missing cuts. It's really, really been a challenge, just providing for the family. I got to do something. So he says to himself, well, maybe I got to find a way to monetize the best part of my game, which is the short game. He has a world-class short game. I think I'll call myself the short game chef. So he comes home, tells his wife, Christy, hey, I got an idea. I'm going to call myself the short game chef. Put it on Instagram. She goes, short game chef? That's so cheesy. That'll never fly. I don't know if you followed it at all or know anything about it, but it's exploded. I mean, it's in a number of different ways. It's gone crazy. Website, his peers that are asking him to come out and help him. He's got so much early success. Now he's finding a way to sustain it. But he's gone from renting to buying as far as his home goes. So it's complete evolution in his life. But you go back to his beginnings, it all started with the mental game, which allowed him to win. Allowing him to win has given him a vehicle and validity when he talks to people that want to learn how to play the game. He's won at the highest level. So anyway.
It's got to be encouraging to see how much the mental aspect has been incorporated into sports now.
Yeah.
At various levels.
Yeah.
And there's more of a focus on that, and there's more of an attention shift to that, seeing what kind of power it can unlock.
Well, Mark, on pretty much on every major college campus that can afford it, they will have a sports psychologist team. 1, 2, 3, however many they can afford, they'll have them there, and they will be there for mental wellness, mental health. They'll be there for sports psychology for performance enhancement. It's pretty, like when I was at Stanford, I was the only guy. So I serviced a lot of teams when I was there in my 2 years there. Now they have people designed every quarter for different teams, and it's a department now. So it's very popular. It's well accepted, and if you move on to my daughter, she's in between Parker and Spencer. Uh-huh. She now is coaching girls varsity volleyball in southern Utah, and she was teaching at Central Intermediate for 7 years, and then now she's in Utah and is carrying on the teaching, coaching tradition, I guess.
How's she enjoying it?
She loves it. Yeah, she loves it. And we've actually visited her this summer. I did a clinic for them for a couple of days, and that was really fun. She's doing a good job. That's good.
And then how did Spencer end up at USC?
So Spencer had an interesting, so he started out, after he got out of college, he had won the national championship. So he wanted to come back and give back to UH. So he volunteered for a year with Charlie Wade. And that's when he met Milan, and they became very good friends. And so he volunteered for a year, and then he had to go someplace that was going to pay him. So, I'm sorry, was that after he played this is after he played 2 years professionally in Greece. And then he came back and was going to give back to UH. And then he went to, his first stop, I think it was UCLA Men, and then I think he went to Cal Women, and then back to UCLA Men. Then he went, got headhunted, went back to Indiana Women, and then he got headhunted again and ended up at USC, where he's very happy. His wife's a USC grad. She's an All-American, and she's very happy to be back home with her sisters. And so yeah, he's really happy. But it's been quite the journey navigating around the women's college coaching ranks. A little bit easier when it's around the women's ranks. That's why he stuck with the women, because there's more opportunities. Basically, there's more jobs. If you get in the men's ranks, it's not much movement. Not many openings come up.
Would you want to be a college coach nowadays, given
No.
the current landscape of it?
No, I definitely would not. I just don't. So one of the biggest challenges for them, Spencer tells me, is that you don't know whether they're coming because they love the game still, or because they got the money that they wanted. That's what it comes down to, and it's really sad that it's come down to that. And you never know when they're going to leave either. They didn't like the way you treated them that day in practice, so they're going to go looking for someplace else. So they've got to get into contracts, like at least 2-year contracts, maybe 3, but they've got to get into contracts somehow. So the athlete has got some skin in it, and they've got to keep an agreement. If they don't keep the agreement, they pay back the money.
And there seems to be this challenge where coaches are put into this position where you essentially have to re-recruit your own team every year.
Exactly. Yes.
Every season.
How many times this year have I looked at my incoming rosters from the incoming teams and I go, 16 players. 8 of them are returning, 8 of them are recruited. It's never been like that. There might be 3 or 4 might be recruited,
right,
but not 8 or 9. What team had 16? There was somebody had 16. 16 out of the 18 were brand new. And then there was the football team. Who was it? The football team that had everybody brand new. Had like 80 guys.
It's astounding.
I was like, what's going on here? I wouldn't want to be a part of it.
No, and especially with the NIL, too.
Yeah.
That's a whole other aspect. From your years of experience in different arenas, the best piece of advice you've ever received that you continue to share?
It's a great question. Probably Jim telling me to shut up at one of those big play. No. Probably, it might go back to my meeting with Coach Wooden. I was a big Coach Wooden fan. Went on sabbatical in '76. My last 45 minutes of my sabbatical was with Coach Wooden. And it was magical. And we didn't talk basketball. We talked all of his other stuff about how do you teach life lessons through basketball. How does your poetry relate to your team? Because he wrote a lot of poetry. And I think what I learned out of meeting with him was work-life balance is really important. And the other thing was he never took his eye off me the whole time, except to reach for something in the drawer. Otherwise, he was engaged the whole time. And the meeting was scheduled for 45 minutes, and he had a plane to catch. So I thought at 45, his secretary was going to come in and grab him. And we went 20 minutes beyond, and he never stopped to look at his watch. He was going to stay with me until our meeting was done. And I thought it was a great lesson in this day and age of people looking at their telephones. Every few minutes they'll look away, go check, see if they've gotten any messages. His was the opposite of that. So I thought it was a great message about staying present, staying engaged is the best respect you can show to your listeners. And you've done just that today.
Perfect. Perfect. Be where your feet are,
Yeah,
right?
there you go. Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Stay engaged.
Exactly,
Oh.
exactly.
How many grandchildren do you have?
6. Becca's got 1 in Utah. Parker's got 2 in Arizona. And Spencer's got 3 in Los Angeles.
Range of ages, assuming.
The littlest, so Spencer's are 3 under 4. Parker's are 12 and 14, and Becca's is 10.
So I'm just trying to map out here. So we're going to be keeping an eye out for future coaches, future entrepreneurs, future professional athletes then.
Oh yeah, I've looked. Kai, the 12-year-old boy, he's getting close to beating his dad in golf. He's broken 80 a couple of times, and so he might be a golfer. I don't know, but he also loves Shohei Ohtani and baseball, and Parker's trying to have him play as many things for as long as possible and not specialize too early. I think that's a great message for all parents, is let them play as many things they can for as long as possible.
Nice. Mr. McLachlin, it's been an honor. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It's my privilege, Mark. Thank you for having me down. It's fun to get back in the old studio again and hang out down here. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Great trip down memory lane. That does it for us for another episode of The Long Game. You can catch it on the H&N streaming app. You can also listen to past episodes as well. The H&N streaming app and anywhere you get your podcasts. Aloha.